Alright, so as far as releases go, obviously this is another nothing weekend, which means another Netflix binge of their shitty movies to talk about. This time we're spared some of the pain and only have 12 instead of like 15 or 16 like there usually are. I'm kind of hoping that since they're sort of getting out of the whole shittiness phase, it seems, with their sort of end of the year bunch, that we can probably start looking at those as they come out, and they'll just be in the regular review videos instead of something like this at the end of the year. So I guess we'll see how that pans out. But and yes, obviously, much as I hate it, this will probably be another one of those overwhelmingly negative videos. But after you watch 12 Netflix movies in 1 week, how else are you supposed to feel but totally and entirely negative? So, we'll see if there's any redeeming qualities whatsoever. And we'll start with the kissing booth. Clearly not. So, this is yet another... For some reason, they seem to be trying to make their forte in regards to their original movies the teen romantic comedy, for some reason. I guess because they consider that mostly the Netflix demographic or something. I don't know. There's got to be some explanation whether it's logical or not. But in regards to the kissing booth, we have Joey King taking a break from trying to do the whole Scream Queen thing, and her friendship with Joel Courtney, who you'll remember from Super 8, and his older brother. And of course, they have a rule that they're best friends, so they can't go into the family in regards to where their relationship stands. A very roundabout way of saying, don't date my older brother, but she totally wouldn't anyway because he's apparently this womanizing piece of shit or something. So, eventually we know where this is going to go. They eventually have to design a kissing booth for their school carnival, and the most contrived series of events of all time is going to get them to kiss, and that's actually just the start. It's what sets it off. The rest of it pretty much has nothing to do with the kissing booth. This is calling it the kissing booth would basically be like calling Juno the chair. That's basically all it's here for. So, and it's sort of trying to do... I don't know, there's some confusion, because obviously it's trying to connect with the present-day youth or something, but it almost seems like they're going by the means of, like, sort of a 90s vibe. Like, sort of, like, the characters behave almost like they're not in Clueless, but trying to be in Clueless, or they saw Clueless one too many times or something, or in that area, or you can even go to the 2000s and say Mean Girls if you want to. But then they also have Molly Ringwald as the mom of the two boys, which is also like, okay, so there's also the 80s teen movie vibe. It's basically, it could be trying to accomplish all these things at once, and just neither is standing. It doesn't work in any case. No matter what era it's trying to be or wants to try to evoke or at least reference, it's not working for any of them. So of course they use like those 90s techniques. You also see, this is one of those high schools where like, if somebody does something relatively mundane that gets at least a little bit of attention, this is one of those high schools where when you walk through the halls, every single person will turn and stare at you and give you the walk of shame as you do that. This is of course one of those movies because that's what drives the whole plot for some reason. So, and obviously the problem here is that this is one of those movies where you could probably... I mean, I guess we're supposed to side eventually with everybody, but really it's also one of those movies where you can probably take a side in regards to her dating the older brother, but then how the younger brother, her best friend Lee, feels about it. But here's the problem, is that even if you were going to pick a side, there's not really anybody to root for anyway. This is a problem for many reasons, because you have Noah, who's the one that's known for basically dating everybody, but also, as a bonus, is apparently prone to violence. And it's like, okay, and she knows basically that she's making a mistake by being with him, not just because of that, but also because she and Lee have the rule, don't date the older brother. So it's like, okay, so you'd probably take Lee's side, right? Even though she's the main character, it seems like we should probably be on hers, but the thing is that Lee himself is also kind of a whiny pissant. So there's really no... I mean, the fact in this story that you even have a side to take when it's like two brothers and the girl between them, And it's not some sort of mutual conflict here. Yeah, you should really step back and question the likability of your characters if you're going to do something like this. Because at this rate, I just didn't give a shit at all. Really didn't help either that maybe I just wasn't paying enough attention or something, but the brothers look a little too much alike also to really give a shit about. Like, whenever one of them would show up, I kind of had to stop for a split second and try to figure out which one was which. I didn't realize the doofy shaggy hair trend was still happening, so that probably has something to do with it. And so, of course, will be one of those movies where, because of the demographic it's aimed for, it's going to be one of those movies with, like, a pointless party montage and stuff like that, which is always, you know, in the best of movies, of course. And then, of course, as this romance, if you want to call it that, blossoms, we do get very, very forced scenes, like the way usually there's scenes like in The Proposal where they accidentally run into each other naked and stuff like that. This movie somehow finds a way, the dumbest, most forced way possible, to get them wrapped up in a fucking curtain together. So that's the kind of shit we're dealing with. And then, of course, if you want to talk forced, this is one of those movies where the couple that's not supposed to be together end up in a gazebo together while it's raining. God knows where that scene's gonna go. But it actually goes in two different ways. Like, it goes in that direction, but it also goes in the forced conflict direction. But none of this even lasts, because this is the problem I was talking about with this guy Noah. Because, like, he's always what it comes back to when you think about how bad the movie is. Because not only do we see that he's, like, prone to violence and will just beat the shit out of anybody. Mind you, this is kind of how Fear started. Remember how that ended. So what we have now is this scene when he actually, I mean, he's not violent towards her, but there's a big red flag when he's like, you know, they've had a fight, and he's like, get in the car, get in the car, get in the car, and all that. And when she doesn't, he, like, slams his fist on the car and screams at her to get in the car. Now, once again, that's not necessarily being violent to her physically, but it's a pretty big fucking red flag, right? So, what does this scene result in? They make things better by going to a makeout spot after she's gotten into the car. I don't know what that says about... I don't know if it's saying something about the characters or the writers or both. I'm gonna go with both. So, and this is basically the kind of stuff that we're dealing with for the rest of the movie. We're supposed to be, you know, sucked in by his little half smile, his charm that's pulling her in. This is like, this is seriously like sociopathic stuff that he's using to pull her in, and it's supposed to be seen as like this little teen romance thing. And the thing is that they even kind of try to call it out by saying that he's using these methods to pull her in. But the charming thing about it is that, oh, she falls for it because he's so charming. I don't know how this movie came to exist, especially in 2018, but this is what we're looking at. And then the main conflict manages to come in because, oh, wouldn't you know it, something's going to come in and split them apart. Not just the little brother either. No, that's not the only problem. Another problem that they brought in is the fact that we're supposed to buy that this fucking meathead has somehow been accepted into Harvard. It could have been, they could have gone with any fucking school, by the way. And it's like, just any other school maybe would have been somewhat a little more believable. But no, we took this all the way. This motherfucker of all people is going to Harvard, and that is where the big conflict is going to lie. That they rarely pay attention to, really. And then it eventually comes into the whole Lee acting less like the best friend and more like the jilted lover thing, which of course we expect when the very first thing they did was make a rule that said... And I know you can defend the rule by saying, oh, well, it was because he didn't want to be put in a tight spot, where it's like, if they should get together and then they break up, or they have some bad falling out, it's going to be like he has to choose between his best friend and his brother, and it's like, you'd think that would be the rule, but no, they go in the very obvious direction. He basically treats it as if he's the one that, like, wanted her, and he actually says the fucking line. He says, he had everything. He always had everything. You were the one thing that I had that he didn't. And it's like, okay, so she's that object to you, but the movie plays it up as if he's just made a really big point, and she has that look on her face that says, like, oh no, I really fucked up. because I'm no longer his object. This is the one thing he has that his brother didn't, and now that's gone because I'm dating his brother now. This is just skeevy as fuck in all directions. I don't even know how to take this. I mean, also not to mention that it's basically like it's basically the movie having a contest with itself to see how many times it can get Joey King to take her shirt off. Which, in any other case, I'd probably say, not sure why I'm complaining, but I'm going to totally complain because Ramona and Beezus just feels like it was yesterday. So I have a huge problem with that. So, yeah, that's what that is. Apparently, it's the demographic for the movie that was made for, apparently they love it. That's horrifying, quite honestly, so, but that's all that is, so we'll leave it. We're going to go on quickly to Extinction, which is this sort of futuristic thriller, at least that's how it sets itself up, with Michael Pena and Lizzie Kaplan as a married couple with 2 children, and he's having these those very annoying dream sequences in movies. We start off with one, which it could be a dream, it could be a premonition, it could be something else entirely. But he's having these visions of, like, what appears to be the end of the world, and they repeat this in, like, the entire first half hour to the point of complete and total annoyance. As we try to figure out, oh, what could these things possibly mean? As if we actually care. We're just hoping the movie hurries up and puts itself to fucking together so we can move on. But the thing here is that there was a little bit of potential in this one, particularly the way it's handled. And there are some scenes that feel really intense and sort of like, even though we're in like this futuristic setting, there's like almost like a bit of a realism to where the terror comes from. Like, it was actually reminding me a lot of a futuristic version of, does anybody remember No Escape with Owen Wilson and Pierce Brosnan, which, it's a movie I like quite a bit. It's basically that, only with like an alien invasion look, if that makes any sense. And there is some stuff that really sort of sets you in with this terror, like when one of the first things they do is they go to the rooftops, and they're like calling for help, and you can see they're not sure who's alive and who's dead in this city anymore, but over on the other side across from them you can see people just like them on the rooftop just yelling for help, and then we see this building get shot down and they're just gone, those people. And it's like shots like that are like, they really set in this terror throughout the movie that's really effective. But for every scene like that actually has an effect like that, it'll follow it up with stuff that's just either bland or going in directions we've seen before, or, like I said, it keeps doing those flashes thing, the premonition / dream / whatever thing. Obviously those do eventually have a purpose and a payoff, and it is sort of like, not to say too much, but there is, like, something in the middle that takes us in a different direction. And it's like, there's something interesting there, and it feels very much, it's sort of like, it's like a Twilight Zone kind of deal, if you can imagine. So, but the problem is that once that's established, and it makes you kind of think like, oh, well, that's an interesting direction to take this, they've got no more interesting directions left. It's basically the same movie, we just know something now. That's basically all it is. And the problem with this is, obviously I'm not the biggest fan of just the whole Netflix thing in general, but it honestly doesn't have much to do with the format itself. Like, it's not necessarily the whole, all movies should be, I mean, sure, movies should be seen on a big screen, but, stuff that's sort of smaller and like that, it probably doesn't matter. Stuff like The Kissing Booth can just stay the fuck here. A movie like Extinction probably would have had much more of an effect if it was released in theaters. It would still be a not very good movie, but I think it would have done it a big favor to at least be seen in, like, a theatrical sense, and something bigger. Would have done it at least a bit more of a favor, but still, overall, it does, like I said, it opens up these areas that seem like they could be interesting. And Michael Pena and Lizzie Kaplan are convincing enough, but overall, like I said, even when it has this huge moment in the middle that seems like it should change everything, it still just sort of feels like, okay, we know this now, but it's still the same damn movie it was before. Just, we've been able to put the pieces together, but once the pieces are together, the puzzle's not really all that... Yeah, it's hardly worth it, is what I'm trying to say. So, but like I said, there are moments in there at least, which is, for being a Netflix movie, is a start. But, yeah, in the meantime, that's what we have to work with. So, we'll just go right on to the third movie, which is, To All the Boys I've Loved Before. So, this is, yet again, another teen romance thing, which is going to be continuous. So, and we start off with this lead character who actually, the actress is actually quite appealing. Like, she can actually carry this movie, and particularly in this genre. And the setup, supposedly, is that she has these 5 crushes that don't know how much she loves them, and they're all from the past, like from 7th grade and her childhood and all that. So instead of going out there and trying to say, you know, ask them out or stuff like that, she just keeps it all inside because she's so shy and so afraid to say what her feelings are. And she writes them these in-depth letters, each of them, and for some reason addresses them in envelopes and then hides them in her closet. It gets it off her chest, basically. So her sister decides to intervene and send these letters out so all of the guys know. Well, for starters, we know the sister sends them out, because there is a whole scene where she sneaks off while the sister's sleeping, goes over, opens the closet, looks up at the letters, and we can see her, like, hatching the idea, and then it cuts, and then the letters are out there. Like, that's a whole scene. That's how that whole thing plays out. Well, there's quite a bit of this movie that's devoted to her trying to figure out how they got out, and when it's revealed later, it's like that she did it. When the sister finds out that she did it, is like way late into the movie. You probably could have had a much more interesting sort of side mystery going on here by not telling us right a fucking way that the little sister sent them out. Not that it would be a big mystery, because there's only so many people that could do it, but it was weird how much it seemed like that was supposed to be like a mystery portion of it, as to how they got out. But then after a while, she's like hardly even asking that question. This movie has such a small attention span, it's crazy. Because, I mean, just look at the title. To all the boys I loved before. Well, the movie pretty much forgets its own title very quickly. Because we have 5 guys that this has happened to. They brush 2 off immediately with some really contrived excuses. One of them ends up being gay, so now we've whittled it down to 2. What the fuck do you think the movie's about now? So this interesting plot we've had, to where she's going to have to extinguish these 5 fires that have been set out, these humiliating, embarrassing fires that have been set out. And we've whittled it down to, it's a love triangle movie. The end. But that's not the end of the cliches. Not only is it a love triangle cliche, it's also the let's pose as each other's boyfriend and girlfriend to make somebody jealous cliche. And we all know where that goes. So there's that, and then as it goes on, as we go further into this, first off, once again, maybe this is my fault, but much like the kissing booth, I really can't tell these dudes apart. Every time one comes on the screen, I have to use context clues to figure out which one she's talking to. Whether it be the guy that her sister just dumped, or the guy that got the letter that's dating her former best friend who hates her. So, who he's trying to make jealous. So, it's... yeah, so we're dealing with all this shit. But there's also, every now and then there's a character on the side that's supposed to be, like, we have John Corbett playing, like, you know, the charming dad and all that, the lovable dad and all that. Her best friend is more of, like, I mean, she's got, like, the hipster appearance, but then she's also, like, I think she's basically trying to be Natasha Lyonne, but once again, it's not really working, so. She actually seems more like she should be a character in Wonder or something. But it doesn't matter anyway. So, as you can probably guess, as if we're not piling on the cliches enough, this is one of those movies where it takes her fucking forever to do something that should have been done immediately. And, honestly, she doesn't even... because, okay, so obviously, she wrote these letters a long time ago. She was, like, a child, practically. And now they've been sent out. So all she really has to do is say, "Oh my god, this is like so embarrassing," but I actually wrote those a really, really long time ago, and somebody must have just found them and sent them out. But they were written a long time ago, and you know, it's like, it's basically finding like a diary you wrote when you were a kid or something. It's like, well, that's humiliating, but has no, you know, relevance now, right? But she doesn't even fucking try that. It just goes from one huge contrivance to the other, where it's like, I swear to God, the real setup to this is she's real humiliated about this guy getting a letter, especially she's got to cover it up because of the whole sister thing. So in order to hide from this guy, she starts making out with the other dude. And this is what sets the whole fucking thing off. Could you... Romance movies in the 80s and 90s were not this fucking contrived. So, then we've got to do the whole, hey, pose as my girlfriend thing, and once again, we know exactly where that goes every single goddamn fucking time, but now we've got to wait the whole fucking movie for the movie to catch up to what we've known this cliche to be for like 20 goddamn years. And that's what the movie turns into. That whole thing with the 5 letters. And it's like, I was actually kind of digging the structure there at first, because it was like, so how are you going to do this exactly? Because it was like, they introduced one guy, because obviously he was her sister's boyfriend, then they introduced the other guy, and then when, like, once the letters are sent out, then they introduce, like, the third guy, and then we get that whole story, and so on. And it was like, it seemed to have real control of this whole 5-person thing. I was also kind of getting a vibe of, if you remember What's Your Number, that movie with Anna Faris, maybe something like that. But nope, fuck all that. We need another love triangle movie and another pose as my girlfriend to make somebody jealous, even though we're gonna fall for each other anyway movie. With and you know how every romantic comedy has that really idiotic conflict in the middle of it, where somebody sees something they're not supposed to or something, and then they have to like make up and shit, and there's all that. There's like layers and layers and layers of those. There's not just one. They just keep fucking going. And none of them have any no. So that's what was wrong here. But like I said, it does take it a long way that the lead actress is as appealing as she is and can carry it as well as she can. Like I said, and characters like John Corbett, for instance, but overall, it's like, and the little sister kind of too. I mean, she's still like the annoying little sister character, but she's not, you know, unbearable, which, once again, is a step in the right direction, and as low as the bar is. So, yeah, that's basically what that is. So, it's basically like it's the whole, like I said, those conflicts that romantic comedies have, usually like just before the third act, and then we just have to wait for shit. That's like the whole movie. Like, it's not even there's not even a conflict section. It's just throughout the movie. So that's incredibly painful, but it could have been a lot worse. And it did have a really nice start, but good God almighty did they fuck it up. So, with that being said, let's go to a Happy Madison movie. Let's go to Father of the Year, David Spade's movie with Nat Faxon, Oscar-winning screenwriter who you probably saw in like the Broken Lizard movies, among other things. So this is basically, if you thought David Spade was missing from Fist Fight, this would be your movie, basically. Doing some weird accent for some reason, it's because Happy Madison, I guess. Because character traits, I guess. But of course, he's the deadbeat dad, he's always drinking and all that, and he and his son are kind of disconnected, and he's trying to win his son over, so they come to the conclusion that his dad is so fucked up that this guy's pushover dad, Nat Faxon, could beat the shit out of him. And when David Spade gets wind of this, he's like, nah, I'm gonna beat the shit out of that guy. And they both get wind of it, and then once again, it's basically Fist Fight. We're just building up to what this is going to be. But then the movie, unlike Fist Fight, the movie keeps jumping the gun. Fist Fight is kind of looking pretty masterful when you look at Father of the Year in regards to how it handled this. It is one of those movies to where there's a lot of physical comedy, most of it failing, a shitload of pratfalls, which is really weird because it's a movie about building up to a fight. This movie is like wall-to-wall pratfalls, and 9 times out of 10, there's like one that actually is even in the context of fighting. All the other is just everybody stumbling around like a fucking idiot. Just over and over and over again, falling off roofs and shit, all that stuff. So, but then, it is a Netflix movie after all. So this movie, that's basically fist fight with David Spade in it, still somehow manages to shoehorn a teen romance in the middle of it. And that is what a large portion of the movie is a teen romantic comedy. This David Spade movie about fist-fighting dads. Alright, whatever. And this, by the way, just happens to be the most convenient girl ever. Because it's like, oh, they're trying to figure out, you know, oh, should he talk to her, should he talk to her, and all that. And when you know it, she just materializes in the store that they're in. She happens to work there. And then I swear to God, this is a real scene. There's like a whole subplot where he's gonna make up for something. He's trying to do something. He's gonna build a pool, basically, in this backyard. But he needs a jackhammer. So he's trying to basically... David Spade says, hey man, I'll put out money. I'll get you a jackhammer and stuff like that. And he's like, oh, you're a deadbeat, fuck off. And in this exact moment, I swear to fucking Christ, this girl shows up in this backyard with a jackhammer. A brand new jackhammer. So, that's... okay. And if this isn't dumb enough, the weird thing about her just randomly materializing like this is at the start of the movie, there is a whole scene devoted to the fact that he can't find her. That she's hard to find. Because she does the whole food delivery thing. And so he keeps calling in, hoping that it's going to be her. He's trying to basically set up a convenient run-in, like, oh, fancy running into you and shit like that. There's a whole scene devoted to how hard that is. And then for the rest of the movie, she just materializes everywhere that he is. So there's that. And then we have, oh, not to mention, she'll also just get naked in front of him on a whim, too. It's like, I've never been skinny dipping. You've never been skinny dipping? And then that eventually leads into a whole scene that goes absolutely fucking nowhere, where they're skinny dipping in a pond, and there's something in the pond. We never see what's in the pond, we never see what it does to them, but there's something in the pond up against their legs, and it's freaking them out. That's the punchline. So, on top of her, we also have his two friends that he hangs out with. We have pretty much his best friend, who is, I believe this was the kid who was the son of Nat Faxon, and he is basically, he's basically trying to be in a biker gang. This is a joke that they milk to death for the entire first half of the movie, and then it just kind of disappears without a trace. But character traits, you know. And the other one is literally a Napoleon Dynamite knockoff. That's the whole joke. I swear to God, I think they even call him Napoleon Dynamite at one point in the store. So it's like, hey guys, that's the joke. That's what that character is. That's the extent of this. This is how dead end most of the jokes are. We're not even going to go into the whole nipple thing, but there's... yeah. So, obviously, since it's a Happy Madison movie, there's going to be a lot of cases where, basically, there are scenes devoted just to the cast fucking around. There's this whole thing where they do, like, this... It's not like a relay race thing, but it's like this... It's this race-type deal where they're, like, on each other's shoulders and shit. This has nothing to do with anything, but is its own scene. I guess, because they run out of ideas, they don't know what to do, but they want the audience to feel like they're having fun, and they try to convince people that they're having fun by watching other people supposedly have fun, and that's all this scene is here for. So, Adam Sandler movies have mastered this at this point. So, that's what that is. They may not go on vacation, but they sure as shit fuck around a lot, so there is that. And there's also a lot of really, really repetitive jokes. There's the whole thing where Nat Faxon is tortured by his, like, stepson, his small stepson that his mother thinks is, like, this perfect little angel. I believe the mother is actually played by Adam Sandler's wife. And all these jokes are related to piss in one way or another. I guess at this rate I should be expecting that in a movie like this, but alright. So, and then, of course, as if we haven't completely scraped the bottom of the barrel of the jokes in this movie, yes, we do eventually do the big joke where the stuffy pushover accidentally gets high. Because the last 150,000 times we saw that joke, it felt so fresh. It just felt so new and like something we had never, ever in our lives seen before. God knows what could happen when they do that. And this hardly even does anything with that. They dive into laundry. That's basically where the joke ends. And they also do, like, actually, you would think, weirdly enough, that this happens because his character just, like, blindly takes pills, like, to calm himself down from some dude. And it's like, this whole stuffy pushover guy, you'd think he'd be a little more careful. He seems so careful about everything else. But he'll just take any pill you give him, because comedy, I guess. So, there is that. And then, there is one funny scene that stands out. When they decide they're going to do the whole, this is back to the teen romance thing, they're like, oh, we never did the prom thing. But they're like, maybe probably 2 years past this. So they're like, you know what, I'm going to do the romantic thing. I'm going to do the big romantic gesture. I'm going to take you to prom. And then they can't get in. And they, because the woman basically without tells them it's going to be pretty weird and creepy if I didn't do my job as security, and we've got two people who are like in their early 20s wandering around a high school prom. Get the fuck out of here. So that's kind of funny, but it's a very small sequence in the rest of this movie. And then we eventually get to the end where there's this really bizarre virtual reality sequence. It's like a virtual reality job interview that he has to do. It's basically just cause for David Spade to have his eyes covered so he can fall down a bunch of flights of stairs. Hilarious. It gets us our Kevin Nealon cameo, too. So, that's basically what that is. And then it just basically ends so abruptly. Like, right after that, it just goes right into the whole... Like, they even... Like, it's such in a hurry that they're trying to do the icky sweet thing that you know the movie's eventually going to try to do. By making him basically, you know, reject the job and all that and say, hey, you're being mean to my dad. Even though he barely was. He wasn't saying anything that wasn't fucking true. But it was the big stand-up-for-him moment. And then there's, like, one final scene that's, like, one final punchline that is so incredibly underwhelming. And then that's it. Like, it just ends so fast. So that's... So, another failed Happy Madison comedy. What the fuck else did you expect? We can keep going. We're going to keep up with the father theme. These came out very close together for some reason. We're going to go into Like Father with Kristen Bell and Kelsey Grammer, where it's written and directed by Lauren Miller, who is Seth Rogen's wife. So, of course, expect him to follow in it. She also took part in, I think she was a writer on it, and she obviously starred in it with Ari Grainer, for A Good Time Call, about the, you know, sex line operators or whatever. That movie was fucking dreadful. This is a lot better than that, but still, don't set the bar too high. So, it's basically yet another, it's the whole, oh, the woman's so busy, the woman's constantly on her phone, the woman's constantly working, oh, she needs to loosen up, oh, she needs, you know, the dude to, you know, keep her in line or all that. And because she uses her phone, she gets dumped at the altar. Not like before they're out there, not a couple of days before, when they're standing in front of the whole crowd. This guy is like, yep, this is when the straw's going to finally break the camel's back, is right now. And then they obviously still had their honeymoon booked, which was this giant cruise. And when you know it, this just happens to be when her deadbeat father, who was hardly ever a part of her life, shows up, obviously Kelsey Grammer, and they get drunk together and decide, hey, we'll just do the honeymoon thing. And they wake up hungover on the cruise, and now they have to deal with that. And hilarity will attempt to ensue, but probably won't. So, first off, you'll notice something. The casting of Kristen Bell seems a bit redundant, given that this is a movie about a breakup that ultimately leads to going to having, like, a sunny vacation spot. It's like, we're already getting, like, huge Sarah Marshall vibes. It's just the shoes on Sarah Marshall's foot now. So, we, also, what we have here is that, I saw a lot of complaints about this movie before I even saw it, because of the whole, it seemed like it was just a blatant commercial for the cruise line. And it's like, that was probably blown out of people in general just blow their criticisms of product placement, like, way out of proportion, just because it's easy and lazy and makes them sound like they're critical. But in actuality, it does stick out a little bit when it's like every time they say the cruise line, or something that's sponsored by the cruise line, they say, like, the whole name. That's not even the issue. It's not that they feel like they're advertising it. It's the fact that we have to see, like, every goddamn, mundane activity that takes place on this. And once again, turns into the whole thing of, it's basically, like, I'm sure Lauren Miller worked hard on this script, but looking at it, it's hard to imagine this script wasn't, like, half of it was dialogue and whatever else, and the other half was just in big print on the pages, the cast has fun. And that's all it needs to say. So, not necessarily us watching it, but as long as the cast is having fun, that's all that matters, apparently. So, we have stuff like, there's the game show. They play a game show on this cruise line that is fucking endless. It just keeps going and going and going. And then, of course, we know how it's going to end because, as I've already said many times before, the death curse in movies, usually comedies, like 99% of the time comedies, if they are absolutely have no ideas whatsoever and they are just filling in as much as they possibly can, they're going to use music. There's going to be a scene devoted to somebody singing. There's going to be a scene to somebody devoted to dancing. Or both. And wouldn't you know it, very early in the movie, Kelsey Grammer just plants a little seed about where this movie's probably going to go. It makes it seem like he's saying it and she's brushing it off and going, oh, I will never do that. But of course, because we've seen movies in our life, we're saying immediately, well, that's what the fucking climax is, apparently. What they're building up to through the whole movie is a karaoke competition. You can imagine how thrilling that's going to be as a climax, and how so not completely barren of ideas it is. No, we're going to see character after character after character just singing fucking songs. Nice. And one of them might have a bit of emotional resonance, but probably not. And speaking of the side characters, there's not a whole lot to them. These are characters that don't even, like, organically come into this. They are characters that literally force themselves into the lives of Kristen Bell and Kelsey Grammer, and they are here to stay, thus forcing themselves on the audience as well. And they don't do jack shit but sit around and aimlessly commentate on shit that we're already looking at, so it doesn't matter what the fuck they say. And one of those people also is Seth Rogen, of course, who, like, sets up like he's gonna be somebody. He's the guy that basically she decides she's gonna hook up with because she's single now, might as well fuck around. And then it's like Kelsey Grammer throws a holy shit fit because she's, like, being reckless and all that. And then he just after a night of banging Kristen Bell, he just kind of continues to hang out with them until he just kind of disappears in the background. Doesn't even matter at all that he's there. He's there. He is here for, like, one reason and one reason only. You can choose which one, because it's one or the other. Because Lauren Miller, his wife, wrote and directed it, or because he's Seth Rogen. He decided to hang around. Or, I guess there's a third option, and that is so they could work in one joke. That joke, of course, being when everybody's talking about smoking weed, and Seth Rogen's character, haha, says, oh, nope, I don't smoke weed. In fact, I've never smoked weed in my life. Of course. So, but I will say, though, it sounds like I am probably being, like, really, really angry towards it. The chemistry between Kristen Bell and Kelsey Grammer does go a long way. Like, the movie is, like, I struggle to call it, I think bad is probably too harsh. It sounds bad when you describe it, and you're really looking back on it and realizing just how kind of lazy it was. But the chemistry between the two of them is the most important aspect, and that works. So, it has that going for it. But even so, it's still, like, every single note in this formula that we know. So it's like, it can only do so much. Like, the movie is still going to be grating, it's still going to go on too long. It's still going to be a movie we feel like we've seen a million times before. But, like I said, it is tolerable because of the two of them. So, there is something there. It's probably the most watchable movie here in this lineup. So, there's that, I guess. So, that's what we're looking at with that. I think the next one is going to be Set It Up. For the love of God, another romantic comedy. So, In this case, it's Zoe Deutsch and Glenn Powell. Glenn Powell, who we got to know and love in like Everybody Wants Some, and his small part in Hidden Figures and stuff like that. Like one of the more likable actors working right now, so that's a good start. And the setup here is well. First off, it sets itself up like the Hallmark movie version of Horrible Bosses, basically. Like, it's, because we set it up, and her boss is Lucy Liu, and his boss is Taye Diggs, and they are horrible, terrible corporate people, who look down on everybody, think everybody's their servant, everything has to go the right way, or it doesn't matter. They'll ask for something right now and berate you to the point of, like, near suicide, just for you to come back with it, and them to forget they even sent you on that errand and go to something else. So we get endless scenes of this for a while, and then eventually it turns into like sort of a Hallmark movie plot, where it's they get this idea. It's actually kind of a charming little plot that could have worked if they did it better, which is they basically decide to construct their own romantic comedy. By making the two of them, like, meet and fall in love, and hoping that if they meet and fall in love, they won't be such shitty people. Yeah, make a shitty person fall in love with a shitty person. Will suddenly make that person not shitty, apparently. The idea is to get them laid. Like, that's the problem. I don't know, this seems to go way beyond that, but whatever. So, I say Hallmark movie because it does have that vibe, but it's actually really weird tonally, because it's like, it feels basically like a made-for-TV romance movie that you would see on any channel. And then just kind of out of nowhere and very casually, there is like one scene where Lucy Liu says the word cunt 3 times in a row. And the rest of the movie is like not even near that, content-wise, so that was bizarre. So this is also kind of people having fun with the whole, hey, we're Netflix, so we don't get a rating, we can do whatever the hell we want. We can make a movie that's basically they basically did the Planes, Trains, and Automobiles approach. It's like, we're gonna make a movie that's basically PG, and then just have this moment here. So, okay. But, once again, though, it seems like if the plot is to basically construct their own romantic comedy, you would think, oh, so this movie's basically got romantic comedy by the balls, and they're gonna have fun with that, maybe do a little satire, maybe, you know, skewer it a little bit. But no, obviously, as they're constructing their romantic comedy to get Taye Diggs and Lucy Liu together, why, of course, they're going to fall in love, and we're gonna go right down that goddamn path anyway. So we're having to watch them do this to other people, and then it's being put upon us as it happens to them. So, take that for what you will. But the really annoying thing about this also is, when you look at formula, it's the same damn thing, because it's the whole clearly obvious setup, because even though they sort of don't like each other at first because he stole her pickle, they get into this whole thing to where he's the dead-end relationship thing, to where it's like, oh, well, how are they going to get together if he's with this girl or whatever? But they immediately set up this as a loveless relationship with him and this girl, and he's like on the verge of leaving it. But then she gets in a new relationship with a guy from Tinder who, by the way, she claims is perfect, and she bangs like on the first date. But we see this guy like twice, and he never even gets a name. She literally calls him, they go mini-golfing on their first date, so through the whole movie she calls him Golf Guy, and in the credits he's listed as Golf Guy. But this movie wants you to believe that this is some big obstacle between the two of them, that we're gonna just wonder, how are they gonna get together with this going on? How could that ever happen? Yeah. So just there's obvious turns when this movie seemed so primed to be going against that, or at least making fun of it in a really clever way. But then it turns out very quickly that this movie doesn't have much cleverness to it. Take, for instance, the scene where Taye Diggs and Lucy Liu meet involves a fat guy pissing in an elevator after taking his clothes off. This is the comedy, by the way. This is the comedy portion of romantic comedy. There's 2 genres in there, you know, that's how they deal with the comedy. So, and of course, we do have Zoe Deutsch playing the lead character, who, like many Netflix lead characters, is, of course, overly cutesy. She's got the expressions, she's got a short attention span when there's food involved, she'll be talking to you and then suddenly say, "I want nachos," and go somewhere else. Adorable, apparently. And an obsession with pizza, of course. This is... They know their audience. They know their fucking audience, don't they? So, and on top of all this, though, it's another one of those things where it has dialogue that probably thinks it's cleverer than it actually is. And then it gets to this point. This is kind of the romantic turn. This is the turn where it starts going more in that direction that we know it's going to go. Involving this engagement party. And it's been a long time. Especially since I've been watching these all week. This says something. It's been a long time since I have seen a movie scene stop the movie so dead in its tracks. Like, when you talk about a movie screeching to a halt, you have no idea what that means unless you've seen this engagement party scene. This goes goddamn nowhere for, like, 10 minutes of, like, movie. And when you're watching a movie, 10 minutes is a pretty big time in the middle of your movie to just stop fucking dead and do nothing. Yes, it does eventually lead to they have pizza together, and when they have pizza together, they fall in love. But still, before that, there was hardly a lead-in to this, because the lead-in has been happening the whole fucking movie. The whole lead-in is they're warming up to each other, but they're like texting each other constantly by this point. They're like real super damn close by this point. This engagement party has nothing. They could have done. You could take the engagement party out entirely. They could have just gone to get pizza by themselves just because they wanted fucking pizza. And this movie would be 10 minutes shorter, and you would never know. There's nothing. There would be nothing missing. And that can really, I mean, even if your movie is, like, struggling to begin with, that's a way to almost kill it entirely. That's dangerous as fuck to do that in the middle of the movie. But they didn't care, I guess. They needed to do the whole party thing because, hey, this generation likes parties. This movie's got to have a party in it. I want so fucking badly to be a fly on the wall in the writing room when these movies are made. Because I can just imagine these people, they're like in their fucking 40s trying to figure out what the kids are into. And that's what all these goddamn movies feel like. It's like The Package, which is going to be the last one we talk about. Like the whole, I'm getting ahead of myself now, but like on the Netflix option, it doesn't even have the title of the movie. It has the eggplant emoji. Who the fuck is in charge of this? Maybe I should finish talking about the setup so we can move on. So, it is, there is some stuff, like, I actually thought the Taye Diggs character was kind of funny. Like, when he sees the Lemon Project, and he's like, "What is this? I hate it." And he has a few lines in there that are funny, and the scene where he's drunk is actually kind of endearing. But, I mean, for the most part, it does go... basically like Father, where it's like the two leads are like, Glenn Powell, even though this is a shitty script that's trying to bring him down, he's still just like an endlessly likable actor that can really power through this. And the same can be said for Zoe Deutch. Like, Zoe Deutch is, tends to be good in general, but people just desperately want her to do this overly cutesy thing. And it's like, at first I wanted to put it on her, but then it's like, this clearly feels like this is the way she's being directed. So it's like I struggle to really just set it on her and say like that it's terrible acting, but it's yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of other things to blame for this. So that's what this is, and of course we're just eventually going in all those obvious directions. There is another very funny moment when they do a different take on the whole airport cliche when you got to get to the airport in time. They have a couple of jokes actually. To where they do a nice little satire of that. So that's appreciated. But had that been the movie, like if that's the way they treated the romantic comedy throughout this movie instead of doing those exact things, we would have had something here. But it's almost even more damning to the movie that they waited till the end to do that, despite committing all the other sins themselves straight-faced. It's like, fuck you for that. So, but I mean, it's, like I said, like Father, it's probably one of the more tolerable ones here, because the leads will get you through it. If you can get over Zoe Deutsch's annoyingly cutesy thing. So, yeah. Let's move on to Alex Strangelove, which is another venture into the sort of young teen gay genre that's sort of going into, like, it's been around for a little bit, but it's really starting to gain more traction, especially with Moonlight being the accomplishment that it is. But I don't know if this movie looks significantly worse because it's come out so close to Love, Simon, which did everything this movie does significantly better, but I'll try not to make this a comparison to that. Looking at this as its own thing, this movie's not going to win anyway. So, what we have... Actually, you know what I think the problem is, just at the get-go with Alex Strangelove, is this guy playing the lead character. I'm not totally sure this guy is... This is just based on one performance. I could be... He may do something else that's, like, totally great. Like Nick Robinson from Love, Simon was, like, one of the annoying kids in Jurassic World. I probably would have never suspected he could pull off a performance like he did in Love, Simon. But this guy, based on this performance alone, I don't think is really equipped to lead a movie. He seems like he's there's something awkward about his performance, but not awkward in the way that the character is. Not like awkward in what the role calls for. It's a worse kind of awkward, and it's sort of like, this guy would be much better off if he was playing, like, the evil twin of Andrew Garfield in some cheap sci-fi movie or something. So that's our lead character, basically. And he says, if Alex Strangelove has any problem, apart from the fact that I don't think it has a strong lead, which is already a huge problem, but also, this movie takes fucking forever to get to what the fuck it's doing. And it's like an hour and a half or something. But when we start off, he meets the new girl in his class that's sitting beside him. His name is True Love, but ironically enough, he can't find true love. He's still a virgin, he's never met the right girl, he's never had a girlfriend, anything like that. So he meets this girl, and she becomes his best friend, and ultimately his girlfriend, and life is really good. But then when she starts, craving to take his virginity, something is holding him back. And it might be his sexuality, that he is only just, all the pieces are starting to come together in his head, and he's like, oh, I think I might have a problem here in regards to losing my virginity to a girl. So what's happened here is, well, first off, I just talked about this with Zoe Deutsch, of course, but we meet her, and she's yet another overly cutesy Netflix character. This is going to become its own cliche if it hasn't already. And so she does, like, the cutesy faces with, like, the expressions, and, like, she's doing that thing with her lip, and it's like the whole, and she squints her eyes, and it's like whenever she's trying to be cute, it looks like she's malfunctioning. So I don't know what to do with that, but yeah, these are our two lead characters. Great fucking start. So, as I was saying, this thing takes forever to get to where exactly it's going, and I get it if you set up, because for a while there they were really moving along nicely with setting up this relationship with, like, in the first 5 minutes, like, to a point where I was actually concerned it was moving too fast. And they do, like, the whole Carrie thing, which is kind of clever, but they also do, like, once again, gotta have a party because it's a teen movie by Netflix, and that's apparently what they think these movies are. So, when the movie is slowly getting to where we're going, where he meets this guy Elliot, and he eventually starts to realize, oh shit, that may not be going in the direction I thought I was going. This movie takes a whole detour in the middle of it. I don't know if this is worse than the engagement party in Set It Up or not. But the thing here is that it's the whole thing where he's got the toad where you lick it and it gets you high and stuff like that. And there's a whole scene devoted to this in the middle of this party scene. And once again, has nothing to do with anything whatsoever. They try to make it come back towards the end, but in a way that still has absolutely nothing to do with what happens in this scene. When he's talking to this dude and there's a connection, it is cutting back and forth for long periods of this guy chasing this toad around while high and seeing garden hoses come to life and dudes throwing fire around. And then this all leads to him projectile vomiting on top of them when it looks like they might be getting ready to do it. So, okay, maybe that's the point of the scene, it was something that held them back. Well, here's the thing, is it's a party. You could have just had them in the bathtub getting ready to do it, and then anybody, any party goer in this scene could have just walked in and puked on them, and it would have been believable. But there is a whole, like, half of this entire scene is devoted to this stuff that doesn't matter, all just leading up to them getting puked on. We've got to watch him get super, super high and see all of the effects of it, plus chasing that toad around. It has nothing to do with anything. And it's almost like, I actually started to wonder, is this little comedy sidekick gonna be, like, a real major character, apart from being the comedy sidekick? No. He just, for some reason, got a shitload of screen time at the front of the movie. As if it was his own movie. Like, he had a whole other movie going on in the middle of Alex's story. So, it doesn't take long for it to feel like a disaster. And once again, this is before we even get to the whole... He realizes that he's going to have a struggle between who he wants. So, romantically. So that's how they play that up. But that's the problem also, is him trying to decide between these two people. This is another problem. I kind of just sort of, you know, made the criticism of the guy. He's too awkward. And he's not fit to lead a movie. But something I didn't mention was his lack of chemistry with, like, everybody. Like, not just a lack of chemistry with the girl playing his girlfriend, not just a lack of chemistry with the guy that he's, you know, secretly falling for, not even really the guy playing the idiot best friend. There is, like, no chemistry between anybody in this movie. Everything feels so incredibly detached. The guy he's secretly falling for feels like he's barely in the movie at all. And I understand if there's supposed to be a disconnect between him and the girl, but for a while there's not supposed to be. When they're becoming best friends and all that, but yeah, there's just something just is not adding up in any of these cases. So that's immediately, in a movie like that kind of has romance as its foundation, and friendship, not feeling any of those whatsoever, not to any effect. And then it goes into, and like I said, there's like one moment there's actually a choice in production design. And this may seem way too nitpicky, and I may be way jumping to conclusions about just a couple of background things, but it almost made me question the sincerity of the story at all, from the director's standpoint. Maybe the writer, oh no, I think the writer and director are the same person, actually. But this moment when we're in the guy's room, and we know that he's gay at this point, I believe, and he's got posters on the wall, but the most prominent ones are one of Hedwig and the Angry Inch over here, and Moonlight back here. And it's like, I'm just imagining them looking at the walls, and they're like, okay, so this is the gay kids' room, right? It's like, what do gay people have up in their rooms? And the production designer was like, I don't know, gay stuff, probably. So it's like, okay, let's get a Hedwig poster and a Moonlight poster. Done. This character's been established. And it's like, and it feels like they so half-assed it. It's like, it's a poster like these, where they're double-sided because they're in poster cases, but the Moonlight poster is the reverse side. So, and when I saw that, it's almost like, I feel like they just really that's not a character trait. The character did not do this. The lazy-ass production designer and the director that didn't give a fuck did this. So it's like, when you're looking at these small things, and they're making you question the sincerity of the entire movie, that you could say I'm nitpicking, but there's also something the movie has clearly doing something wrong here, that if it's something that small that just feels like it breaks the entire spirit of the movie, there's been something wrong throughout. This was just kind of the final moment where it's like, you know what, I just get the feeling this movie's not into this. But whatever. And then once again, we have the moment where, as if we don't have... After we've already had a couple of conflicts, we've already got a big enough conflict as the plot itself. No, we also have to have the moment when the girlfriend, after they're already fighting, walks in on something and immediately turns around and runs away. and then he has to say no, and then chase after her, and that whole thing again. So that's in here. So and then there's also a moment when it starts to feel. Last time I did one of these Netflix videos, I kept seeing the similar themes in them, to where it's like they all kind of stopped thinking, and it was like one big group think, and they're like, I like this idea, let's put it in like all the fucking Netflix movies we have. And I kind of got that vibe again when it was like, there's the whole thing where they use 16 Candles. It's like a whole reference point to make some huge point in this movie, in the in the sort of resolving the conflict section of the movie. And it's like, wait a minute, didn't I just see something where 16 Candles was like this big deal? Oh yeah, it was To All the Boys I Loved Before. Another damn Netflix movie that came out like right with this one, like right in the same vicinity. So it just all feels so lazily put together, especially when like, I don't know if that kind of shit is more easy to see when you're watching them close together, like one right after the other. But the fact that it's there, even if people don't always see it, but because they don't always watch it in this torturous fashion, I don't know. So yeah, if there's one thing the movie has going for it, the ending, there's a poignancy to the ending. Like the kind of the last scene with him and the dude, and then the videos of all the people talking about their coming out process. There is something there, but yeah, as far as poignancy goes, like overall, Love, Simon, this movie is not at all. There's actually even the whole subplot where they're gonna like meet up in the motel, and that's where they're gonna lose their virginity. It's like, that's like a whole subplot with Jeff Bridges and Sybil Shepherd on The Last Picture Show. It's like, if this movie's not even Love, Simon, do you really fucking think it's The Last Picture Show? Of course not. So we're gonna leave that at that. I guess we'll go on to Tao. Yet another moment where, if you think it's bad when Netflix tries to constantly venture into romantic comedy, they also seem to try to tackle sci-fi quite a bit. Really low-budget B movies that they try to pass off as something semi-intelligent or something, and Tao is yet another one of those. It's set in a future that we never really see, because we're stuck inside Ed Skrein, who we know from, he was Francis in Deadpool. It's like this sort of evil scientist type who's trying to basically perfect his artificial intelligence by using prisoners that he just gathers at random. They try to explain it by saying he basically picks people that the police would never look for. He's basically, so he's like Jigsaw, and he's trying to make AI. And it even feels like a Saw movie, the way she's taken, and then she wakes up, she's got a contraption on her, there's other strangers. Yeah, but no, it does go in other directions, and our lead character is Megan Monroe from It Follows, among other things, and she's basically this wannabe badass who goes around and like basically robs people in nightclubs. This is some random girl that robs people in nightclubs, and in the first 15 minutes of this movie, we're supposed to believe that she's also a MacGyver, on the level that she can take a small pair of scissors and eventually cause a chain reaction that makes a giant explosion happen. In the first 15 minutes of the movie, these are the two things we know her character can do. Rob people and make shit blow up with a small pair of scissors. As you can see, this character portrayal is probably going to be a bit uneven. So, as it goes on, she eventually learns of his big AI who, like, runs the house, Tao, who is voiced by Gary Oldman. It was like, when I saw the cast list, I was like, I guess I can check this out. It has Gary Oldman in it. Didn't realize he was doing, like, Spacey and Moon. Like, it's all voice work. And he does add something to it. Like, he actually manages to make his voice work in this AI that's just like an upside-down triangle and lights on the wall. And then he's also, like, a big robot. He's also these little robots that clean up blood and shit. He actually manages to use his voice and actually make the AI seem, like, sympathetic and innocent. Because it's one of those cases where, like, when he's away, not conducting these experiments, she's basically, like, befriending it and making it, like, more human and answering all of its questions about what outside is, what humanity is, and all that. All this surface level stuff that seems like it's going to be super deep and then ultimately isn't at all, sort of stuff throughout. Um, and it's one of those cases also to where it's like when you look at the way the whole thing is set up, like this dude's plan, and it's basically like, why is this his method? The whole using people and then killing them thing. And it's like, because the movie wants to be a thriller. That's pretty much the only explanation we get. I suppose it could be creepy that we don't know why this is his method, but the character's not interesting at all. So the only interesting thing about him is, much like in Deadpool, I had to keep convincing myself it wasn't Nicholas Hoult. So it's even, with hair, he actually looks even more like him. But yeah, and that's basically the extent of this. And there is something interesting about the AI itself, like the way it can it can kill people violently and then be these little robots that comes in and cleans up all the messes like I was talking about. Yet also sort of, despite its programming of being a killing machine, it can also be the sensitive side that we see with her that she brings out of it, and that more innocent, sympathetic side. Which is also, I guess, props to Oldman's voice work as well. But then it also has stuff to where it's trying to be suspenseful. There's a really contrived scene where, of course, somebody's going to come to the house, and of course, they just barely don't see that she's there. There's one scene that's, like, way too ridiculous, where she has to get his glasses off of him, but his glasses are, like, hooked to his shirt right here. So she does this super, super smooth move, where he is leaned over her at the dinner table, and just as he leans over her with his glasses right here, Tao, like, reminds him of an appointment he has or something, and when Tao speaks, he turns to look. And mind you, she's here, and he's just bent over her, like this, directly in front of her. And we're supposed to assume that when he turns his head to look at Tao, she can take his glasses out of his shirt without him ever saying, without him ever noticing that that happened. That's how this movie views suspenseful scenes and characters getting away with stuff very smoothly and very, closely. It's ridiculous. It's very dumb. So, and then we also have these moments where, it's much like I was talking about earlier, where it's like a character's gonna like say one thing or mention one thing, and you become suddenly light years ahead of the movie. They say one thing early in the movie, and you're like, well, I can only imagine that's going to be what the end is. So it's like, why else would they bring that up if it's not going to happen? Of course it's going to happen, and the only way something like this could happen if it's the climax. So, no surprises there whatsoever. Also, speaking of the climax, this is a movie that thought it was a good idea to have a crucial death scene happen with a Wilhelm scream. And if you think that's an effective method, you cannot be helped. You cannot be saved, ever. So that in itself just took so much credibility out of it, single-handedly. And this is in like the last 5 minutes before we even, after all the dumb shit's already happened. It's like they just wanted to cap it off. Just one more dumb thing that took it down like an entire other level. There it is. So there is that. If I had to say good things about it, for looking as cheap, for feeling as cheap as it does, the effects aren't that bad. And I guess that's about it, honestly. I thought I was going to have more, but maybe not. Because it is one of those movies where it's like, you sort of expect it to have themes, and it kind of does try to have themes, but it is like that whole thing of, the more evil we see him, and the more sympathetic we see the AI, it's like, oh, AI is more sympathetic and human than the actual human that created it. It's like, how truly original and thought-provoking. And it's like, she even has her old monologue about how we become our own creators and stuff like that. And it's like, I'm sure the middle schoolers that see this will be absolutely blown away by this movie's intellect. So have fun with that. But in the meantime, it's just another dumb, cheap sci-fi movie on Netflix, trying to pass itself off as something that's much bigger and smarter and thought-provoking than it actually is. Moving on now to how it ends. Forrest Whitaker trying to bring some class to the Netflix name. Whether he's successful or not, I guess depends on you, but this pretty much is probably exactly what it looked like and what it sounds like. Not to be confused with Extinction, which I think I was doing before I saw both of them, but, this is yet another apocalypse movie, pretty similar to many other apocalypse movies that we've seen. It starts off with the whole... Well, it technically starts off with, Forrest Whitaker having dinner with his future son-in-law, who he doesn't know is going to be his future son-in-law yet, supposedly. And he also doesn't know that this is going to be the father of his grandchild, potentially. But before these things can really break out, before he can really, you know, earn the approval of the stern father-in-law, Forrest Whitaker, the apocalypse breaks out, and it's all the stuff we've seen before. The news outlets are talking about it before the power goes out all over the place. There's evangelists on the radio. There's weird lightning storms with hardly any thunder. It's mostly just all of that. And yeah, and then obviously there's going to have to be a journey to get to one person that's been separated, of course. So you're going to run into the desperate people, the ones that'll kill you for just about anything. Even if your car's broken down, you're pretty much fucked. There'll be traps where somebody looks like they need help, but really they just want to take your shit. All the stuff we've seen before. And it's really for a while this two-person journey with this dude and Forrest Whitaker, and there is a good idea in here. There definitely is. But in pure Netflix fashion, this movie isn't all that interested in finding it. It's interested in, like, putting it there and showing you what the possibilities were, and then just kind of not adding anything to it, and just letting itself go for almost 2 entire hours of just... a lot of this movie is, like, cars, it's just shots of cars driving down roads. Every now and then we get a decent shot of something, but... overall, it's really one of those... You hear often about those nothing happens movies, but the thing about it is this truly is a movie where you're not even sure what to say, because just not a lot happens. And usually that's, you know, there's a connotation with that and, like, artsy movies. But the thing is that there's nothing particularly artistic about this movie either. Like I said, there's maybe a good shot here and there within the 2 hours, but overall, it's just, like I said, just these bland shots of, like, open roads and shit, and, like, dust storms or whatever the hell, and that's about it. And then they just kind of go from place to place and person to person. They'll occasionally, like, pick up somebody that joins them, but then one reason or another that person will go, and then they'll just keep going. Every now and then they try to, you know, spice it up with, like, these brief moral dilemmas, but these moral dilemmas have, like, no depth whatsoever. So, and yeah, there's a couple of, like, you know, chase scenes, weirdly enough, that probably could be intense, except for the fact that they're extremely poorly edited. Like, both of these chases end with one car, like, completely flying and flipping over on itself, and these scenes are so poorly edited, I kind of, like, was taken aback both times that happened, because I was under the impression that it could have been them. Number one, of course it's not going to be them, but also, it's like, 1 minute I think it could be them, but then it turns out they're, like, yards away from the accident, and they keep on driving along, and it's like the editing is just so fucked that you can't even distinguish who is what in this scenario. And of course it's going to be dark because of all the storms and shit. But, so yeah, there's really just nothing here. Obviously, you know, Whitaker's trying to... There's a certain gravitas that he brings to pretty much every part, but the thing here is that watching his character is the most interesting part, because he's like... He seems like just the normal sort of, you know, big dad character, but he actually seems, like, weirdly prepared for this, in a way to where, like, the thing here is seeing, like, how he's gonna handle the situations. It's, like, the main point of interest, because it can be... His character comes off a bit unpredictable a little bit, but then after a while, he just turns into a coughing machine, and it's like, and we know where that leads, so it's like... Sort of like the Viggo Mortensen scenario on The Road, where it's just like he's the sort of main source for what's really got your attention here, and then they just take on the sick role, and they basically have to be dragged the rest of the way, and it just takes the power out of all of it. So yeah, that's unfortunate, and after a while it felt like it just went on forever. Like it's way too long, and then eventually all of this is just to get to an ending to where basically it just kind of feels like everything was a waste of time. It's like they didn't even. I don't think they even. I would imagine they didn't even have an ending in mind when they got to the point in the writing where they needed an ending, and so they just said, "Well, then this happens," and end, and just like it's kind of all for. Yeah, there's no satisfying conclusion. There's like no conclusion. It just kind of stops. So yeah. So that probably could have been something, but it was way too damn long, and they didn't use Forrest Whitaker to his, total strengths like they really could have. But there were these little tiny bits where it was like, there was probably something good in here, but fuck it. So there's that. Let's hurry along to Ibiza, which apparently also has a subtitle now, Love Drunk. So, but when you actually watch it, I think it just says Ibiza by itself. So there's that. And this is brought to us by Adam McKay and Will Ferrell's company, and they are credited producers, which is a bit odd. And it stars Gillian Jacobs as, wait for this, I've been talking about how these Netflix movies are like way too similar, and it's like they're not even trying, they're just putting out all the same stuff more or less. Well, Gillian Jacobs in this movie plays an overworked woman named Harper, who has an overbearing boss that she would really like to just tell off, but unfortunately she has to keep working, and the movie basically centers around how she's able to get past this and get over that own personal obstacle that she has. Yes, I also just described Zoe Deutsch's character and set it up. Even the character name is the same. but anyway, going on that, despite that, this movie is, obviously her and Vanessa Bayer and the other woman, who I don't recognize, but I think if you take TV out of the equation, this is like the first thing she's done. This is like her first movie or something, which would explain why I didn't recognize her. But, and they go on a vacation, and very, very quickly you come to learn that this is Girls Trip. That's basically what it is. It's not like the same plot or anything, but it might as well be This could very easily pass as one of those unrelated straight-to-video sequels to Girls Trip. Like, they could have put a 2 on Girls Trip, released it straight to DVD, and nobody probably would have asked questions. So, if they're familiar with the idea of unrelated video sequels, there it is. And the thing here is that despite the fact that Girls Trip did have, it also felt like a knockoff of like Bridesmaids and the like, but it still kind of had its own jokes and its own identity. This has brand new jokes like blacklight cum stains in motels. It has drawing a dick on someone's face. I mean, you can tell they're like really breaking the mold with this, and like every single joke just feels like something totally new and fresh. Doesn't it? And you know what the plot is eventually they go to a club, because of course they fucking do. So many damn club scenes, so many damn drinking montages. But at one of these clubs, there is a DJ. And as soon as Gillian Jacobs sees this DJ, she immediately says, like, I'm gonna bang him. Like, that's my life's mission now. Like, I'm gonna abandon work, I'm gonna abandon everything, because I want to bang this dude. And that's it. Just because they, like, locked eyes from a distance. And sure enough, they follow the guy to where he is in Ibiza, and that's what the plot is. That's all. So, you can imagine what they use as filler. Well, it's quite easy because eventually I get to a point where I even struggle to call this a movie. It is literally just montage after montage. This movie is about an hour and a half, and it's got to be an hour. An hour of that runtime has to be montages, because you've got obviously you've got club montages. They get on a plane. There's a drinking montage. They go to like 2 more clubs. all dancing montages, all drinking montages, and then of course all the DJ scenes. The DJ, to build him up, gets like his own scenes where he's just fucking DJing, and they're like bouncing around and shit. There is actually one of these club montages, honest to God, is just them standing in place and jumping up and down in place while the camera moves around them. That's like what the whole movie is. There is nothing else to it except that. So, and her work thing, I guess. But that might as well be a bookend, because they barely mention it. It's this kind of conflict where it's like, oh, this might mess up what she's got going on. But then, of course, we know where this is going anyway, because she hates her boss. Gee, how the fuck do you think it ends? So, once we've done all that, every now and then there is a comedy scene where it ends... Basically, the punchline is everybody screams. I was having horrible flashbacks of Rough Night from last year, but also it's like, well, scenes where like they don't know what else to do. I just talked about Anchorman 2 recently, right? So it was like I was having flashbacks again where it was like, oh, so their idea of a punchline is just have everybody scream until the scene cuts to something else. It's like, okay, it's starting to make more sense that Adam McKay and Will Ferrell are producers on this now, especially Will Ferrell. So there it is. And like I said, that's basically all this movie is. It is devoid of anything resembling entertainment, it's devoid of anything resembling comedy, and it's devoid of anything resembling something worthwhile. Its existence is meaningless. It does nothing for anybody. I really hope it didn't do anything for the people that made it. Well, I guess if it did, that would be its sole purpose. This movie employed people. That's the best thing you can say about it. So, there that is. So let's go on to Calibre. I forgot about Calibre when I said earlier, when I mentioned a couple of movies saying, like, they're probably the best ones on here. I forgot that Calibre existed as well, but Calibre is also as ambitious as it seems, and as very well liked as it was. The critics like went crazy for it, I think. It is a decent movie that is bogged down by, once again, familiarity. Like, it's sort of in that vein of like A Simple Plan or like Shallow Grave, the Danny Boyle movie. But it's were those where people came across dead bodies. This is one that's more like sort of like in that Very Bad Things vibe, where it's like you have the Getting Away with Murder movie, where like it might as well be its own genre. It's one of those, and it's one of those cases where it has a very interesting start. Like it's very character driven at the start. It's sort of taking its time. It uses its locations really well. Like it shoots them really well, and then it also has these places where like there's a lot of times where it uses dissolving in place of just cuts in regards to the editing, which works really nicely and kind of has this sort of eerie sort of flow to it. But eventually it does get to the point to where the key event of the movie happens, and then it just gets into... It's the thing that sets off every movie like this, where the plot would be so different if everybody didn't immediately jump to the conclusion that they were going to be arrested for an accident, and they panic and they get paranoid, and that panic and paranoia just makes the bad decisions turn into worse decisions. And that kind of thing can be like, when a movie sets itself up like it's going to be maybe something a little smarter, a little more off the beaten path, you sort of expect maybe they'll go a little beyond that, but no, just like pretty much any other of these Getting Away with Murder movies, that's pretty much what starts everything off, is people just immediately making bad decisions just out of panic. And you can say that's realism, but even so, we've seen it so many times, it's eventually going to lose its impact. So, but like I said, the story is told well, like from a visual standpoint, and the fact that you can tell that they do have ideas up their sleeve to take this in directions you may not be expecting, which is, of course, welcomed. Like, well, at the same time, also, I won't go into specifics, because it'll be... This is one of those movies where, like, you only can really explain the first half, because you want the second half to be seen without pretty much any warning, but it's one of those cases also where they're setting up clues pretty blatantly also. Like when movies like plant those little seeds in the entire first half, and then wouldn't you know it, those things slowly start to come back and put all the pieces together. But the thing is I guess if you see too many movies, it's like you can point that stuff out from miles and miles away. It's like they just throw in this teeny tiny little detail like most people would probably just completely skip right over or would just pass right by them. And it's like you can point it out as, well, that's clearly going to mean something later, whatever it is. And it's maybe supposed to be something that you maybe see and forget about, and then when it comes back around, the surprise hits you, or it takes you in whatever direction. But yeah, if you, like I said, if you've seen enough movies like this, you can point out those seeds very easily, no matter how hidden they are, and you can kind of see where the directions are going to start unraveling. So there is that. It also eventually resorts to like the fake outs, like the moment when obviously the whole thing's about the paranoia. So there's going to be somebody that like shoves the dude against a car and says, "I know what you did," and when they both look like so afraid, oh my god, we've been found out. It turns out the guy's talking about something else. How many times have we seen that shit? it's too many. And once again, you can see it's so early in the movie. It's like you can just see it from a mile away. It's like this scene is so not what it's building itself up to be. So it's like because of that, it's one of the more what should be one of the more suspenseful scenes in the movie is almost entirely suspenseless. So that's unfortunate. But still, like we have the two lead actors, regardless of that, are still really good and still like really portray that sort of. They're so believable in regards to where like the desperation and the paranoia is coming from, and it's like I said, even though it's a cliche that they act the way they do, they still make it believable anyway, which is really important to making the movie rise above its material, and they really do pull that off well. And there's also something they pulled off where this key event happens in the woods, obviously, so pretty much any scene in this movie that's like in the woods following that just feels like really long. Like you just it's because of the intensity, not it's in a good way to where it just feels like these scenes are probably like maybe 3 minutes or something, but they feel like an eternity. Because you know what's happened there, while most of the characters that are there right now don't yet. So that's something really well, and the way they handle the townspeople, where once again has echoes of other movies for sure, but there's still something. What the movie does that's actually really clever is it makes this like scary, but it also makes it like not entirely. It makes it feel not entirely inappropriate, the way the townspeople are portrayed and what their decisions are. So, somebody, I think a critic, said that it was, Calibre is like a mixture of Ken Loach and Wes Craven. And it's like, that's probably the best way to put it. So, I'm just gonna steal that. Like, that's sort of like the bottom line of this movie. So, if you're familiar with Ken Loach's work, and I'm sure you're familiar with Wes Craven's work, I think we're looking more at like his really early stuff. That's pretty much perfect. So, but like I said, that stuff does sort of bring it down, but there's something worthwhile here. So, especially if you're really into that kind of movie. So, let's go ahead and end on The Package. Yet another comedy. So, remember when I was talking about Alex Strangelove a little bit ago, and I said this guy seems kind of incapable of being the lead in a movie. He can't carry a movie. I don't think he has it. Guess what? Yeah, I didn't realize when I was watching Alex Strangelove that guy is also the star of this, the main character. So, this is brought to us by how Ibiza had Will Ferrell and Adam McKay. This one has on the production credits Ben Stiller and the Workaholics guys, who I hate so much, giving us flashbacks of Game Over Man, which is obviously dreadful, but So, here's the thing about what the package is, and I didn't know this until I was watching it. I had a feeling what kind of jokes there would be, given the title and the whole eggplant emoji thing it was trying to identify itself with. No, they're not really exaggerating. This movie, 100%, is one long feature-length dick joke. Like, many bad comedies have a dick joke that goes on way too long. This movie devotes its entire premise and the whole movie itself to a dick joke. So if, like, that's your thing, congratulations, this movie exists. Despite all... any wheel turning in the world should have made this never happen. And here it is. So... there it is. And they obviously make every single individual dick joke that they possibly can. They show the point is that there is a severed dick that has been removed from one of the friends accidentally, and who has been taken to the hospital, and they have to get the lost dick, find it, and then get it to the hospital in time before it's too late to put it back on. Hand to God, that's the whole plot. That's the whole movie. So the dick ends up in all kinds of different scenarios. It ends up in the dirt, it ends up with bugs on it, it ends up in one of the characters' mouths, it gets washed in alcohol, it ends up over a fire, it's any possible dick joke this movie covered. You almost want to say it's admirable, but I can't do it. I can't say that anything about this movie is admirable whatsoever. So, instead, it's also... and they do throw in other tired jokes. I mean, it's not just one tired dick joke. I mean, they want to use all the tired jokes. Like, profane children, for instance. There's a character in this movie that might as well be Stifler's brother from American Pie. And that's, like, one scene that they stretch out as long as they possibly can. There's a shitload of lazy movie references, which of course they can't help but point out, as if there's one of those bad parody movies that thinks you don't get jokes. So they're like, hey, that's like Terminator 2. Hey, that's like Cliffhanger, they say when scenes like Terminator 2 or Cliffhanger happen. There's one joke that I thought was going to be clever enough to not mention the movie, where he uses a rose to decide, like, how much time his dick has left. And if the flower wilts, then he's under the impression his dick is gone forever. And it's like, I get the reference you're making, I get it. Don't say anything. Just let it sit there. But then, no, you have to have a character come in and say, what, this isn't Beauty and the Beast? It's like, thank you, we got the joke half a fucking hour ago, you idiots. So, once again, Netflix movie, teen characters, dick jokes. You gotta have your drinking montages again, because we didn't have near enough of those in everything else I've talked about in this whole list. So we do get a drinking montage. We might get a couple of drinking montages. Remember when I was talking about, it'd have to be hilarious to sit in the writer's room and see these people writing these movies thinking, oh, we're definitely appealing to the teenage demographic. Well, I swear to God, one of these kids, it feels like they should be long past saying something like this, talks about their camping trip. It says they're going to go twerking with Mother Nature. And I thought at first we were supposed to think he was lame for saying that, but nope, he actually twerks in the woods later. This is what the writers at Netflix think this is still happening. Well, the fact that they're doing it unironically, okay, but if you're one of the... forget it. So, this is also one of those cases where they reach their destination. Okay, I told you what the plot was. They reach their destination before we've reached the hour mark. So they've got like almost 40 minutes to just dick around and add whatever fucking conflict they want. Stick in the fucking Workaholics guys and cameos and shit. Well, not cameos. The long-haired dude is like credited at the beginning and everything. So we're like waiting to see him, and then he's revealed to be the brand new conflict when it looked like the movie was ending. So as if I didn't hate those guys enough, they're the ones stretching the movie out by being in it. So there's that. And then, yeah, so, and I talked about Game Over Man, and it's like, I remember towards the end of that movie, I believe, Daniel Stern lost his dick, and it flew around the room, people were carrying it around and all that, so it's like, good lord, what is their damn obsession with that? Because it's like, we're still in the same year, and they took that joke that was way too prolonged in Game Over Man, and they were like, okay, we're gonna make that an entire movie now. Fantastic idea, you fucks. So, once we've done that, we've also got all just random weird jokes in here, like the brother that's like hell-bent on getting his friend to bang his sister, like to a weird extent. There's the scene where like the dude takes the panties of the other girl, and it's like it's weird already, but the character even says to him like, dude, that's serial killer behavior. But the thing is, the second that he takes the panties and says who they belong to, we know the damn punchline. We know the damn punchline long before it shows up. So it doesn't fucking matter anyway. This is like, I mean, we've been talking about the bad comedy, not even just Netflix, we've been talking about the bad comedies in general for quite some time. This movie is an unfathomable low, or what I would have thought would have been unfathomable, but no, it actually exists. And it's like, just how fucking low does comedy go? I don't even know if this answers that question. This could be, if this movie can exist, there's a low that we're not even thinking of yet that somebody will try to reach. So, I mean, I never watched, like, you know, that underground comedy shit or whatever the ShamWow guy was doing, but if you even know what the fuck I'm talking about anymore. But just as far as like stuff that's like right out there for like the public, I don't know how we got here, but and the fact that a comedy genius like Ben Stiller's name is on it, I don't know. So we finally reached the end of this. Despite what it may look like, this video is not, in fact, a suicide note. I know why you might think that, but the thing here is that I wouldn't take my life. And the reason that I would never take my life is because the longer I get to live, the longer all these movies I talked about will be in the past. The more I live, the farther and farther back in the timeline of my life they will get. And the farther back, the better. So, I hope you enjoyed this whole let's catch up on the Netflix movies thing, because I'm never fucking doing this again.